Alright, so as I promised, Iptables. Let's dig into our Iptables. So, at first, I would like to, of course, let's say what actually Iptables are. So, Iptables is a user space utility program that allows the system administrator to configure the IP packet filter rules of the Linux kernel firewall, implemented as different netfilter modules. So basically, it's a built-in firewall in the kernel. That's Iptables. CentOS has firewall D, and here you have Iptables in Debian and Ubuntu. So maybe we will start with actually some basic rules that you should apply to if you want to actually set up your Iptables, because it's the best practice is to start up fresh. So if you have like CentOS, you have Firewall D, or you have like I said, Debian and or Ubuntu, you have Iptables. You have to uninstall all of them because they will all include various Iptable entries or rules that they will interfere with what you are doing. So it is recommended that you start fresh. So on CentOS, uninstall Firewall D, and on Ubuntu or Debian, purge UFW. So that's the thing you should do. So I have Debian, we have a Debian server, so we should do sudo UFW disable. I don't have UFW because I purged it long ago. So basically that's what we should do. Next we should do sudo apt get remove UFW if we have it installed. I do not have it installed. Or you can do sudo apt purge UFW. Yeah, so it's clean, nice. If you had any other firewalls, make sure to flash the basic Iptables rules that might have been created. So to do to flash all the rules from Iptables, you can use sudo iptables -f. So basically flash all of them out. So you have like clean Iptables to set up. Next, would be good if you actually checked what kind of Iptables version you have at the moment. Because to be honest, it of course depends on what kind of distribution you have and what kind of version of distribution you're running. The newest Iptables version is 1.8.8, at least at the moment when I'm doing this video. So let's just check. I have Iptables version 1.8.7, so not bad. So it's quite okay. Okay, so let's just start with showing the Iptables list, how it actually looks. So it looks like this. You do sudo iptables -l, so to list, and we have of course our Iptables chains. So you have the input chain, the forward chain, and the output chain, which we and you are going to utilize to insert different policies here. So our basic policies, as you can see, are set to accept. All of them are set default to accept output, forward, and input chain, because this is like a fresh Iptables without anything. Okay, so first of all, until I will actually start talking about the policies, I will specify all the basic rules that you should do when you actually start Iptables fresh on your server. So the first and basic rule is, I'm just gonna post them here because I listed them out for myself to say. So put specific rules at the top of the policy and generic rules at the bottom. So the most important rules should be always at the top, so at the first, second, and so on, and the most generic rules should be at the bottom. What is a generic rule? I'm gonna show you in a moment. So just I'm gonna paste it down here. So remember as I said. Okay. Second, the more criteria you specify in the rule, the less chance you will have of locking yourself out. So just remember, if you're putting anything here in those chains, try to specify it as best as you can. So it will minimize the possibility of you being just logged out permanently out of your server or just blocked. So secondly, the most criteria, there you go. That's the second rule. The third rule, of course, as we were saying, avoid generic rules like this at the top of the policy rules, like this one. So I'm gonna show you. There you go. This is a basic generic rule. Sudo apt -a append. So we are appending something. I will talk about appending and inserting the rules in the index stuff in a moment. So appending to the input chain minus protocol. The protocol is TCP, so we're specifying the protocol TCP. We specify the port, so it's 22, so it's SSH. We're doing the J and it's dropped. So J means that what kind of action is being taken while this is performed. So everything is being dropped on this protocol. So basically, if I just now appended this rule, I wouldn't be able to log into my server because I'm working. Well, I would be able because I've changed the port to 666. If I had the default port SSH on 22, appending this rule would block my SSH, so I would be just now logged out of my PowerShell window. Okay, so remember, this is a generic rule. Doesn't have much things specified here. This rule should not be at the top of your Iptables list. Should be somewhere down. Don't put it up. Okay, let's take this out. I'm not gonna put it in. Next, always have some kind of a backup doorway to your server in case you block yourself. Yeah, that's very important because you sometimes can put something in your Iptables that is gonna block you just totally, and then you're gonna have be in a world of hurt. So remember to have a doorway or something that you can actually, if something happens, you have to have a backup plan to get into your server. Well, next thing, whitelist your IP address at the top of the policy rules. This rule needs to be at the top, otherwise it won't work properly. So remember, just to put this rule, I'm gonna list it, there you go. Sudo iptables -i, so this time we are using the index. So if you're using I, the index, it always goes up. It's gonna be up here at the first rule. So first rule, second, third, and so on and so on. So if you're using -i, it's always gonna be in the front. If you're using -a, so append, it's always gonna drop to the bottom of your list. So use this. This is my IP address. Yeah, right now let's check. There you go. It's at the bottom, as you can see. I've appended. Thanks to this rule, I whitelisted my IP address so it won't be blocked. Do it. And of course, know what your policies do and understand the rules that you or others set up. So just be aware of what you're putting here and what others put in the Iptables. Consult with others if they are working with you on Iptables, so you will know what kind of policies are being written and inserted into your server, so you won't be surprised. Okay, this is enough of this babbling. Let's just go to some other stuff, because that's like just basic things that everyone should know about if they want to start Iptables. Okay. So we have our chains. We even inserted the first role to our chain, to the input chain. Now the second thing, we checked our version of Iptables. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the policies. So as you can see, default policies are set to accept. Everything is set to accept. So basically everything goes through your server. So goes to your server and goes through your server and goes out of your server. So the input chain is everything that is going into your server, forward chain is everything that goes through your server, and output chain is everything that goes out of your server. So Iptables by default uses the filter table, not the net or the mangled table. We have, of course, three chains: input, forward, and output chain. As you can see, the default policy for all these chains is set to accept. It means all the connections, packets, are set to be accepted and allowed to be processed. So at the moment this server is extremely insecure because all connections are accepted. If you are starting fresh with Iptables, make sure that all your default policies are set to drop. If you want to change the policy of your chain, you can do it by typing, and now I'm gonna show you, of course. There we go. Excuse me, just got scratched for a moment here. Let's go. Pseudo Iptables -l. Okay. So basically, it should be with sudo, of course. So you can actually, with this command, you can change the policy of your chains. So, as I said, all the chains should be default. In the default, they should be set for drop. Of course, if you want to change the policy, you just change it to accept, right? But I'm just gonna change it to drop. So drop the input, right? Which is of course gonna, well, as you can see, the moment I've done this, it basically dropped me out of the server, of course. So I'm just gonna work here for now. So Iptable sudo -l. Needs to think for a moment. Yeah, you see, my connection was, I was disconnected, because once you set this policy on, everything that is coming to your server, so any SSH connection, any kind of connection you have established between you and the server, it goes down, it drops. So that's it for my PowerShell for now, and there you go. So we're gonna for now work on my server. I'm just gonna go with it like this so I can show you. Let's go once again. So as you can see, I have like a accept policy, and the policy on my forward chain is accept, and my output chain policy is also accept. Okay, that's fine. So the first one is set to drop. So basically, oh, there you go, input chain policy set to drop. Okay, so like I said, we gonna, okay, sudo iptables policy forward drop. Bye bye. Output yeah. Drop. There we go. So you have all the policies defaultly set to drop. Okay, so basically this command is gonna set all of your default chains to drop, all connections, and if you set it to accept, it will allow all the incoming connections, so SSH, Apache, and so on. So it's better to drop everything and then punch the holes in the firewall, allowing certain stuff in, then allow everything in and try to find all the stuff that might come in unnoticed. Basically, that's the way. Okay, so just for us to make the presentation easier, I'm just gonna change the policies to accept input so I can work on my PowerShell and show you other stuff. Accept forward accept and output accept. Okay, let's go to our PowerShell. Right. Okay, so that's the basic thing. Let's do sudo iptables -l sudo. There we go. Okay, next thing. Okay, so you can also do the same to other chains, but it is recommended that you keep the default policy on drop and later on change the specific policies for blocking traffic. Yeah, so that's what we were actually talking about. Okay. So let us start with blocking particular IP addresses to the server. Okay, so one important thing here, the rule can be appended to the end of the chain as we were talking about. So when you do something -a, it's been appended, or it can go to the top of the list when you use -i, which means index, or you can replace some stuff as well. So if you want to set the role as one of the first to go, you have to use -i. So let's just check it out. Something like this. So you have iptables -i input -s source, let's say, and then we have the source, we have the target, j target, drop, right? So we're gonna do it like sudo if I can remember it correctly, I'm gonna do check without the IP address. So let's check. Yep, and there you go. So basically connections from this IP address are dropped at the moment. Okay, to deny particular IP addresses or subnet, yeah, you can use something like this. I will show you in a moment. Okay, I've written it down. So you get like sudo iptables minus I index input fun. Here you specify which number to set the rule to. So basically, here you can specify what number the rule is gonna be set to. So if you have like, you know that this rule is gonna be, you want this rule at the top, you can put it wherever you want by changing this number. So basically it will look like something like this. In a moment I'm gonna show you. So let's take this out. So of course minus S. Here you have all the subnet minus J drop. So you can specify the entire subnet as I did here with the /24. So you can specify a particular IP address or all the whole subnet. Okay, so let us check. Now it looks something like this. Right? We are blocking stuff out of this subnet, dropping basically. To delete the rules from a chain, let's do something like this. First, it's good to check what numbers are actually being given to your rules. So we have to do sudo iptables minus l -- line numbers. So it will just give us numbers of our policies. Of course, this is like only basic. You have like 3 policies, so no brainer here. But if you had like, I don't know, 25 policies, 30 policies specified, then yeah, it would be useful. So let's see, there you go, we have the numbers of the policies now specified. Next thing, we have something like this. So to delete the specific policy in your chain, you use this. So this command sudo iptables -d, so it's delete. Okay. So here, and here you specify, of course, which chain. So it's input chain, it's forward chain, or it's output chain, and the number you want to delete, of course. So for example, number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on and so on. So let's just maybe delete the number 2 here. Number 2, and let's check, and the number 2 is gone. So just take a look at this, because we had like 3 rules here. We dropped the second one. What happens here? So as you can see, this rule that was first is of course first, and the third rule jumps here, so it's now the second rule. Okay, so we know how to delete those. If we want to block outgoing connections from the server, we would need to type something like this. So let's say we want to block, so we type sudo iptables -i output -s. So let's say we want to block specific ports. So for specific ports, we will do something like, I'm just gonna show you in a moment. Sudo iptables -i, so index on the input chain, so everything that's coming in on the port, TCP port. We specify the port, so --d port. We specified it for port 80. Everything that comes into our server on port 80 is gonna be dropped. So it will block any connections to the web server, let's say on Apache. This stuff is good, of course, for admins when they are working on a server stuff. They are doing some maintenance or something when you want to block connections at the moment where you're doing some maintenance work. Later on, I'm gonna show you also some other examples how you can actually block people that want to connect to your server for a certain amount of time when you want to do some maintenance on the server, when you want to change something, you're doing some updates, stuff like that, and so on and so on. Okay, so this is just a, let's just call it a generic rule, okay, just a basic rule. I'm just gonna show you later on the more specific rules. So if you want to enable particular IP address to the server, let us see, we will have to use something like this. So let's say we want to enable like this IP address. So we are doing sudo iptables -i on the input chain, so everything that's coming in again on the port TCP port, on protocol TCP on the port D port 80, so on the port 80, and we specify the address of the machine that is going to be connecting to our server on this port, and it's going to be accepted. So okay, let us get this rule on. We have it here, as you can see, right? This is the number NAT, and you got here HTTP, right? So it was port 80 HTTP. You could also specify it here like this probably as well. Sorry, because you can add ports do like this as well for HTTPS, right? Okay, so or whichever port you want, you can just change that. So that's basically allowing somebody from a specific IP address to get into our server. If you want to save your IP table rules, which is really important, if you're making up rules, just remember to save them. So first of all, when we listed our stuff, we can do something like sudo sbin iptables save, and then we go, and there you go, we have our iptables stuff committed now. So there we go, commit. This is how it looks. If you want to flash all the rules, just get them out of there. Remember sudo iptables -f. So okay, so I think we went through the basic stuff of iptables. Now let's go to some examples, some simple rules that you can set up at your server that you can use. So let's say what to do if you want to avoid locking yourself out of the server and other users as well. So of course we want to take backups like we showed here, of course, of our iptables, right? We can also use this command. I will show you, because this is one command that we can use, but we can also use this command. Just a moment. Okay, sudo iptables -save in the root folder. Iptables works, right? Well, yeah, probably need to have more privileges to do it, but well, basically you get the picture. You can also save it here. Okay, restoring the configuration. So restoring the configuration looks like this. If you saved it to this particular place, you can actually, of course, restore it with this command: sudo iptables restore from root. Iptables works, and then of course you need to specify which backup it was. So you can of course do those iptables, save your iptables with timestamps. So this is just a timestamp added to the iptables. If you want to check up how to add timestamps to the to your backup configuration when you're saving, just look it up on Google. I'm not gonna paste it here because it's pointless. It's really easy, and just type in Google iptables saving timestamps. You're gonna have a lot of stuff on it. Okay, let's go something else. Scratch this for now. Okay, let's do tables -l again. Okay, so what do we have next? Next we have like allowing HTTP and HTTPS and dropping all the remaining traffic. So basically we need to start with this. Okay, so this is the first rule we need to insert to our iptable. So it's iptables -a append, so it goes down. Output chain, we're appending to the output chain because we want to drop all the traffic that is going out of our server. So if we have mstate relate established -j and accept. Sorry, not drop but accept. We want to accept everything that is going out, right? All the HTTP requests. Second one, I'm gonna show you, is the one where we specify what kind of ports we want to use. Of course, I showed you before, but it's a little bit more complex. So it's not a generic rule anymore because it has much more things to it. So you have iptables -a output again on the outgoing chain. The protocol is TCP/IP. We use now multi-port. We use D ports, and here we specify, of course, port 80 and 443. So HTTP, HTTPS -m state, and we call it new, the state new. So okay, and J is accept. So yeah, that's how it looks. So basically, this is the second rule. And the third rule that is gonna drop everything else, we're gonna do something like this: iptables -p output drop. So basically everything else is being dropped apart from port 80 and port 443, so HTTP and HTTPS. So those three rules. But to be honest, let's go back for a moment here. It's better to use, in general, it's better to use reject on output chain instead of drop, because that will speed up failures. So it's up to you which one you want to use, either reject or drop. Reject is faster. So okay. So let's maybe briefly I'm gonna show you once again this stuff. So the first rule is this. The first rule allows all related traffic. Okay. Second rule allows HTTP and HTTPS traffic. And the last rule needs to drop all other remaining traffic, right? So, like we specified. So this one drops everything else. So that's if you append those three rules, that's how they are gonna work, of course, because they were all on A, the dash A, so append. Okay, the blocking ports. Let's go to blocking ports. Let's now say we want to block sudo apt -a append output chain -prot p, so protocol TCP/IP protocol, and we are blocking everything on port 25 that is going out with drop. All right, okay. So another thing, how do I log dropped port details? So if you would like to log dropped packets to syslog, first you need to log it. Right, so if you want to have logs regarding like dropped stuff in Iptables and you want it to be saved in syslog, you need to insert this role. So it's sudo iptables -a append into input chain -m limit. So limiting to 5 minutes, j log, of course, log prefix, port, everything that is being dropped on port 80. So this basically is for port 80, right? And log level 7. So this is the first rule you need to apply, and the second rule, now dropping it, drop everything on port 80, so you will have all the things going into the log and you will see it. Sudo iptables -a append to input chain -p tcp -- destination port, of course 80j drop. So drop everything on port 80. So the first rule makes the logs available, the second rule drops everything and sends all the information to your logs. You can of course change the ports as you wish. Okay, so next thing, log everything for debugging. Exactly. Okay, so how can you actually do that? I'm gonna show you with so let's start with the input chain. So there you go, sudo iptables -a to the input chain -j log prefix firewall input. Everything is gonna be logged now from the input chain when you do this command. Second command, of course, for the forward chain. So sudo iptables -a forward chain -j log, again to the logs, log prefix firewall, because name of the log firewall forward. So everything that is gonna show up in the log as firewall forward chain linked to the forward chain. Okay, because logs are really important when it goes to debugging, so it's good to have them. And the last one, of course, output chain, sudo iptables -a output chain -j log prefix firewall output. There we go. So when you have all of the logs set up, you can just dive into them and see what's going on if you have any problems. Okay, how do I view blocked port rules? Another thing, how do you view blocked port rules? Okay, so there is quite a lot of comments that you can use. So first I'm gonna list the comments for you, and then I'm gonna speak about all the different things inserted into the comments. So let's start with the basic comment. So sudo iptables -l and v. Okay, there you go. Next one uses grep, so you can do grep port where you can actually specify the port, right? Let's see, maybe port. Okay, so maybe like I'm gonna change this to, oh, there you go. So this one specifies everything with grep. We got like pipe grep and -e, so e is specifying everything that's being dropped. So all the policies you can list with that, all the policies that are dropping something in your at your IP tables. So you can of course change it to like accept or whatever here. So another one that we have is just a moment. Pseudo Iptables output chain. If we have anything on our output chain, well, we don't have anything added on our output chain. Okay, another one, Pseudo Iptables -l input chain. It's the same. You can do the same for, of course, forward chain. We have some stuff on our, so it shows all the stuff on our input chain. And the last one is gonna be, I think, the longest. So we have pseudo iptables -t filter -l chain line numbers -n -v. Yeah. NFT tool. Okay, so I guess this is yeah, it's without that. Should be without this. Okay, so let's go back to the maybe first one. Okay, I'm just gonna do it like this and this. I'm just gonna talk about a little bit about those. So the -l -l lists info for specific chains. So as you can see, input, forward, output chain of given packets, packet matching table. Yeah, so now let's go if we have something like where it was, I gotta check. We had something with, oh, if we have something with line number, right? I'm just gonna go without the T. Without the T. Chain in tables filter is incompatible. Use NFT tool. Okay. Right. Okay, so this is not compatible. I'm gonna go back to this. But basically, if you use line number, you can see the firewall rules with the numbers. So that's what this is supposed to show you. -n or -n. Do not resolve names using DNS. Show numeric output for IP addresses and port numbers. So this. And -v. So verbose output. This option makes the list comment show the interface name. Okay. So basically that's how you actually can list or actually list all the stuff from Iptables regarding like dropped stuff, accepted things. You can list ports. You can, well, just basically using pipe grep you can list quite a lot of stuff. I had some syntax problems here because as you can see it said to me that it doesn't utilize some stuff. I'm not gonna go into it right now, it's a waste of time. So okay, let's go forward. Never backwards, always onwards. Okay, Next thing, how to replace roles without deleting them. Well, this is sometimes a bugger, because actually when you have roles inserted into your firewall and you don't want to actually delete them, you just want to replace them as they are read, well, you can do something like this. Let's say we have a role like this one, sudo iptables -i forward -s, so we have specified the subnet, and -d, we have specified another one. So this is our source, this is our destination, and of course everything is going to be accepted. So let's just specify this. Let's do iptables L. We have it here on our forward chain. So basically everything from this subnet is passing to this subnet, right? Okay, so let's say we have this rule and we want to not delete this rule, but add another rule that is gonna be replacing this one without actually deleting this one. So what we need to do is, just a second, I'm gonna do something like this: sudo iptables -c forward -s. So this is our rule, accept. Well, now double I don't know how to call it, double pipe. I don't know. Either way, yeah, slash, and then we have our iptables -i forward, and then accept. When we do this, okay. So the second rule will check if the rule exists. If it returns true, nothing happens. If it returns false, the shell will execute the second iptables rule. So basically, if we now go to our iptables L, we have like another rule attached to the first rule, and if this rule checks out, everything is fine. But if it doesn't, it goes to the second one, and then the second one is being neutralized. So basically, that's how it is. So without deleting the first rule, we managed to attach another one to it, and if this one passes, or if this one fails, this one is gonna be activated. Okay. Right. Okay, so now let's go to the fun stuff. Let's say we want to block a whole IP address range to some kind of service. Let's say, well, Facebook. We want to block all Facebook for our users. How to do it? Well, first we would need to check with host -t a www.facebook.com. Well, there you go. I have a problem with my resolve.conf. There you go. Nice. Okay, well, either way, with this command, you can actually check the alias of the of Facebook. So it should actually show you this IP address. I'm just gonna post it here. Moment, give me a moment. Should show you this. I'm gonna show you on my, say here, command prompt. Let's go ping facebook.com. There you go. Here's the IP address of Facebook. Matches, yeah. Okay, so that's our IP address of Facebook. Now, since I had this problem with my resolve, I will have to fix it later on. Okay, next, what you need to do is you need to whois and then use the actual IP address that was given. Then you do grep init number. So it will actually throw out the IP address range that Facebook uses. So you will have like IP address range from the beginning till the end specified. Probably it won't work. I'm gonna check. But since my well, actually it worked good. So there you go. This is the IP range starting from 0 to 255. Okay, so now if you would like to block all the incoming traffic from Facebook to your server and kill all the Facebook lovers, you have to do something like this. So just a moment. There we go. Sudo iptables -a, so append. You're appending to the output chain. So just to rephrase that, we weren't talking about the input chain. So everything that comes to you, everything that goes out from your server. So all the requests to the server of Facebook. So you're basically dropping everything from your server, or people connected to your server. Sorry. So output chain -p. So on protocol to TCP, you're specifying Ethernet 0 in as an input, output. So input is Ethernet 0, output O. Sorry, O, not output. O is Ethernet 1. And then you specify, of course, the subnet for Facebook. So the subnet is going to be 31.13.64.0/18. That's the subnet for the whole Facebook website. So when you append this to your Iptables, it's gonna drop basically all Facebook activity on your server. Bad argument -d. Okay, bad argument -d somewhere. Probably I have something misspelled here, so maybe it was like this. I don't remember correctly, to be honest. -a output. Yeah, well, okay. Either way, I would have to mangle and tangle with it a little bit, but that's the main thing you would have to add to drop all the connections. Okay, let's scratch that one out. So basically Facebook is dropped right now. Let's say you want to specify the specific time that you want to drop the connection to the Facebook server, because you received a lot of requests from the workers, and they want to use it on their free time, and let's say the free time is gonna be between 12 and 13, so between 12 o'clock, right, and so between this time and this time they have 1 hour break and they want to use Facebook. So okay, so you're gonna do something like sudo apt -a output chain iptcp -m multiport -d port https. So you're specifying those two connections -i Ethernet 0 -m. Here you specify the time, So time start is gonna be 12. Time stop. So you're giving them 1 hour, and again specifying the whole subnet with -j accept. So basically in this frame time you're gonna accept all the traffic from Facebook, and you're gonna also reply to it, so they will be able to use Facebook for an hour. There you go. So this is the rule. Of course, this scenario presumes that your certain policy, default policy, is set to drop. So just remember about this. This is gonna work when you have set everything to drop default. Your default policies are set to drop. Okay, how to drop all the TCP UDP traffic during service hours? Let's say the thing I was talking previously that I wanted to show you. If you're a network administrator, you're working on your server, doing maintenance, updates, whatever. The previous stuff that I showed you was basic, generic. This is the more practical thing that I'm gonna show. So there you go. We are doing sudo iptables -a appending to the input chain again. Minus p on the TCP. The time, of course, we are setting the time. So between this time 2 and 3, so time start, time stop, 1 hour, the server is gonna be down, so dropped. So everything regarding TCP connections is gonna be dropped for an hour on our server while we are doing something, right? Okay, I'm just gonna go through it. Okay, and then the second one we have, so this is TCP. Don't forget about UDP connections as well. So we have another rule. It's basically only UDP inserted here, appended sudo iptables -l. Yeah, and there you go, 2 rules here. Set to drop TCP, and UDP between those times your server is gonna be on maintenance time. Okay. Next thing that I think is also quite important, and everybody wants to avoid, of course, DDoS attacks and brute force attacks. So how can we protect our server, our web server, from DDoS attacks and brute force attacks? So the easiest way is to limit the number of connections for a single IP address to your web server or to your server, right? So let's do it with this command. I'm just gonna do it like this. So we have here sudo iptables append again to the input chain -p TCP -sin -m multiport destination port 80 and 443 -m con limit above 20. So 20 connections. This is the number of connections that can be made on those ports, and nothing more from one IP address. So one IP address can make only 20 attempts of connection attempts on those ports. Otherwise it's gonna be rejected. Reject with TCP reset. Alright. You can drop, of course, incoming connections if the IP address makes more than 10 connections to the port of 80 or 443 in 100 seconds. So basically this rule is the first rule that should be added to the iptables, and it should be well, if you want it to work properly, shouldn't be appended, it should be -i indexed, so you will put it on the top of your iptables. So bear in mind that all the stuff that I'm showing you, just bear in mind that most of them has sorry, dash I here, and you have to think about it yourself. Which ones do you want to put where? I'm just telling you that this one probably should be on the top of the list, not at the bottom. So don't suggest yourself with this, okay? Think about it if you want to use it. Okay, so let's just scratch this. So this is the first rule that we want to add to Iptables if we want to stop DDoS and brute force. And the other two rules that are gonna also enforce the first rule and make it even harder for people that are trying to mess with our server are, so this is the second rule, sudo iptables minus a on input chain minus p tcp minus m multiport. Now we specifying, of course, the ports again, mstate new minus recent and set. This is the second one, and the last one that you will set. The last one is this. So iptables minus a, again input chain on TCP multiport, because we're using two ports, mstate new, of course, mrecent update. So we are now updating. So we're checking 100 seconds is being set, hit count is being set to 10, and then drop. So basically we are dropping incoming connections if the IP address makes more than 10 connections to the port 80 and 443 in 100 seconds, right? So if you put all of those three rules, it should basically secure your server a little bit from all of the DDoS and brute force attacks. I think it should be quite helpful. Well, and the last thing I wanted to talk about at the end of this short Iptables tutorial is how to monitor active roles in Iptables, which is also very helpful. So you can add this role. So we're using now watch. I'm just gonna do it like this: sudo watch minus interval 5 Iptables and NVL. So we're again specifying those specific things that we talked about previously. We're doing pipe grep with -v. So we are just gonna, and then we are putting 0, and between those two zeros you have 5 spaces, right? So remember that, because this is important. There are 5 spaces here between this 0 and this 0 when you're making this roll. Okay, I don't know, let's check. As you can see, nothing popped up at mine. Well, I guess basically, okay. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about is how to monitor your active roles in Iptables. Right. So you have to do something like this, of course with sudo. Just gonna do something like that. So you do sudo watch dash interval equals 5 iptables dash nvl. So again, something we were talking about previously. Pipe grep dash v, and here we have 0, and here between this 0 and this 0 you have 5 spaces. So this is quite important. Remember that between this 0 and this 0 are this and this is 5 spaces. So basically this is gonna show you all of the rules that are at the moment specified at your IP tables, and they are active because we are looking for the ones that are actually active. Well, okay, so at the end I'm just gonna do sudo iptables -f, so flashing. Okay. There you go. So flashed all of them. And I think that's gonna be it, you know, for Iptables. I think I've covered quite a lot of things here. So I hope you're gonna use some of those. I hope they will be useful to you. It was supposed to be only a small tutorial, and it went for quite a long time, as you can see. I just wanted to talk about Iptables briefly, and well, hopefully you will have something out of it that you can use. Okay, so basically, thanks for listening, and I will see you in the part 6 of my Debian server tutorial, when I'm gonna attempt to set up webadmin and show you some stuff regarding webmin. Sorry, not webadmin, but webmin. What you can do with it, logging in, and other stuff. So stay tuned and see you around.